صباحكم خير وسعادة مشاهدينا الكرام، وحياكم الله ويانا في هذه الحلقة الجديدة من برنامج صباح الخير يا وطن، تحت رعاية صاحب السمو الشيخ حمد بن محمد الشرقي عضو المجلس الأعلى حاكم الفجيرة حفظه الله. تستضيف إمارة الفجيرة فعاليات منتدى أسواق الطاقة في نسخته ال13. راح نكون وياكم في بث مباشر نتابع من خلاله جانباً من فعاليات اليوم الثاني من المنتدى. نتابع.
Your Highnesses, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'd like to welcome you all to day 2 of the Energy Markets Forum. I'm delighted to have with us and to give a special welcome again to His Highness Sheikh Saleh bin Mohammed bin Hamad al-Sharqi, Chairman of the Port of Fujairah, and Sheikh Rashid bin Mohammed al-Sharqi, Deputy Chairman, Fujairah Oil Industry Zone, and indeed to all of you again for joining us this morning, again under the patronage of His Highness Sheikh Hamad bin Mohammed al-Sharqi, member of the Supreme Council and the ruler of Fujairah. Just to very briefly recap yesterday, I know you all absorbed a lot, but we had a series of geostrategic sessions. We will be having some more geopolitical economic discussions as well today, as you'll see from your programs and from the website, a full agenda again for you. We had the Enoch workshop on LPG markets, and we ended the evening, of course, with the wonderful Aramco Trading CEO New Silk Road Awards, and congratulations again to all those very deserving winners. This morning, hopefully, most of you got to some of the breakfast briefings. I mean, again, tackling questions we'll be tackling again in the afternoon round tables, the global macro geopolitical outlook, the Saudi economy outlook, AI and trading, and much more. Again, you'll see from your programs that after the plenary session here this morning, there'll be round tables to attend. Most of you may have pre-registered for those, but if you haven't, you can see from the program and let our team know which session you'd like to attend. To get us going this morning, we're going to have a forum survey. Many of you will be familiar with that and with the system of how it works. I'll ask Emma to put up the clickers. Hopefully everybody has found one of those on their chairs. We'll put up questions for you to consider. We will give a few seconds for your answers, and the last button that you click will be your answer taken, and then we will look at the results live and see what the pulse of the room is and take it from there. And I'd like to start with one or two. I will have joining me for some of the survey questions 2 of our delegates, but let's start with the first question and get the sort of take of the room on what your opinion is. And of course, this is around the oil price. What will Brent crude be on the last trading day of this year? You have there 5 choices. Of course, we know where we're at today, and we've been comfortably in the 60s for quite a few weeks now, and we've seen the trajectory of where the oil price has gone this year. But again, you've got 80 plus to $60 or below. So we'll start the clock now and see what we get. You can come, you're most welcome. I was going to call you up in a few minutes, but Yaran, you're very most welcome. Mr. Yaran from Rystad, and I will invite Sarah Akbar, who is one of our winners from last night, of course, the Lifetime Achievement Award. Another round of applause, perhaps, for Sarah from Oil Surf Kuwait. Please, both of you, please come up and join me. I won't be calling on your comments yet, but please, thank you so much. And your mics are there and ready. So let's have a look at the results. Okay, that's quite decisive. 35%. We're in the middle of the range, 35% for close to 65, which is about where we are, 31% 70, slightly more positive than where we are at the moment. So playing it safe as we go towards the end of the year. Most of the room thinks we're going to more or less stay where we are. I'll come to you later for your comments on that. Okay, let's have a look at the next question. Now we're looking at next year. Again, same question, but average prices. The question before was where are we going to end on December the 31st? Now next year, what is the outlook and where do you think we're going to average throughout the year? Let's have 10 seconds on the clock, please. Okay, 29%, 23%, 65 to $70. The majority of the room is voting for, which is, you know, quite close to, of course, where we are today. Yarand, you have a clicker there. I don't know if you had a chance to vote, but tell me, how would you have voted? Let's look at, I mean, we have the first question of where we're going to end this year and the average for next year. What would you have voted and why?
Yes, I would be in the lower end of that because both this year and next year we see a quite modest global growth, maybe 0.8, maybe 0.9, and we see a lot of new supply. So in that situation, you typically have a downward pressure. So just 1 year ago, I was on the same stage here with with Gulf Intelligence. The oil price was 75, and we got the question, what will it be in 1 year? And 3 analysts answered 75. I actually said 65. I think that was seen as completely out of consensus. But the fundamentals tend to go through, and with all the infill drilling we saw post the very high prices we had in 2022, it is actually a lot of non-OPEC oil also coming into the market. So I think we are in the fundamentals speak for itself. When you have more oil than demand growth in the market, you will see a depressed oil price. So 65, I think, is not a bad bet.
Okay, and I mean, you were saying a year ago you thought we'd go in this direction. You said you thought we'd go in this direction this year. You were right. Some others were more hopeful. We did start the year, of course, stronger. Thanks, Yarand. Sarah, I mean, why have we dropped this year? What would you say is behind the drop in the oil price this year? Were you surprised at that? I mean, sticking just to the first question of what's happened this year. You need to use your microphone. And please, both of you, remind very close so we can hear you, yes.
Good morning. And I would say, abracadabra, what's the oil price? And normally, oil price does not
Sarah,
go
please,
by consensus or by polls. It goes by fundamentals. And the reason behind the oil price this year, as you noticed, since Mr. Trump came into power, and he's all about, I want a lower oil price, I want a lower oil price, gas price, that's the driver. And he's pushing. And, you know, what we learned so far is what he says he does. So that is, you know, from a political dimension, there is a dimension there.
I mean,
but
when you say he's pushed it, you mean he's pushed producers to produce more oil?
Well, he tries. He tries.
Yeah.
But the reality is OPEC Plus has put some more oil into the market, and this is the trend. So the trend, they are adding slowly into the market, and that will actually psychologically give the market the signals that, look, this is the price where OPEC is comfortable. And let me reassure you, what OPEC is trying to do all this time is to ensure the energy security for the whole world. So they don't want to see that zigzag coming up and down because it doesn't help with the investment. As you know, this is a result of the investments that we do in the industry. And if you see the latest report from the EIA, you know, there isn't much enough, you know, let's put it this way, enough investment going to the upstream in order to provide all the supply. That's why at this point in time, there are many, many people, investors, who are actually looking to invest. And when that happens, the oil prices tend to be suppressed. So that's what happened.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. I mean, we've got another set of questions which address actually one or two of the comments that Sarah just made. But before we leave these two results, Yarand, just back to you on next year. I mean, the average, again, we're looking at a similar one according to our audience here. Would you agree with them this time? Or are you perhaps more pessimistic, given what we're seeing, you know, on the global macroeconomic front?
Yes, I think maybe still I would be on the lower end, closer to the 7% or this 60%. Since, as I said, demand is quite modest and we have non-OPEC growth of maybe 1.5 million barrels. So the lower it goes next year, the more it will recule back in 2027 and 2028. So I'm very optimistic on the oil price in 2 years' time. But next year, I'm still not very optimistic on the oil price. But of course, it is in the hands of OPEC. And I think OPEC has very successfully managed the oil market over the last 2 years. And I think they are in a position to continue to do that. So I think it could actually be influenced quite efficiently. and then a sweet spot might be in the middle. So, but then we need to see different ambitions than bringing back all the volumes.
Okay, interesting that you say it's in the hands of OPEC. We'll see if everyone else agrees with some more questions. Thank you. Let's, Emma, let's have the next question, please. We have a set of questions that we're going to put to everyone and get their opinion. We're back to OPEC Plus decision. They've been raising supply quotas, obviously, this year in the face of uncertain demand, according to the market analysts that are producing those reports out there. Despite that, they've been increasing, putting supply back into the market. Does that signal the end of this sort of oil market management where they were, of course, cutting supply to support prices post-COVID, etc.? Do you agree or disagree that this does mark the end of that particular oil market management era by OPEC Plus? Let's get the results from the room. 10 seconds on the clock and from our guests on stage. Okay, 67% agree that we're seeing a sort of a turn of strategy, if you like, and we can get into the nitty-gritty of what that is. Sarah addressed one or two points there. Let's have the next question, then we'll get some comments. The IEA has forecast global oil demand growth in 2026 as the same as this year, 700,000 barrels a day. OPEC expects double that amount next year. Again, we saw in the last year or two IEA and OPEC and other agencies indeed differing on their forecasts for demand. The reality, I think, came out more or less in the middle in certain quarters. But which is closer to who's going to be more accurate? Is it the IEA, OPEC, or will it be somewhere in the middle, which is a safe answer? But, you know, again, we've seen the different agencies differ quite a lot on that. So again, let's get 10 seconds on the clock. Everyone's playing it very safe this morning. 54% in the middle, but, you know, IEA getting, 10% more than OPEC, that says something. Okay, let's get the next question, and then we'll go to our panelists for some commentary. What will be the biggest impact on the direction of oil prices? China demand, OPEC plus supply, geopolitics, US macro policy, rather than slow down so far. And of course, the other producers in the world, non-OPEC plus oil supply growth. So which of those will have the biggest? Of course, they will all impact the price one way or the other. But which would you say would have the largest impact next year? 10 seconds. Wow. Okay. Let's keep that result up, Emma, for now. I'd like to go to Sarah to ask you how you voted. I mean, in the last few months, despite the nervousness in the market of oil flows and, of course, a lot of disruption in this region geopolitically, but not on the water, people have said this premium is there supporting the price, but it's not really actually influencing it more than other factors. What would you say?
Well, I voted OPEC plus supply.
Okay.
OPEC has always been right, so I am...
Kuwait is an important member of OPEC.
They have been doing a fantastic job, so I can't see why this will change. And they have been so flexible in managing where they want the price to be. And that's why I think, for me, like you said, we had almost a nuclear war in the region where you have 25 million barrels goes from this Gulf, and nothing happened. So why would geopolitics have that impact still? So that's why I am saying the most important factor here will be what OPEC decides, and they have been very rational, very reasonable, very accurate. So
they've certainly managed the market well, I'd say. Most people would say. Yaron, I mean, tell us what you think, and how much of the current price would you say is the premium, geopolitical premium support, And also, I'd like you to address A, which is China demand. I'm surprised it only got 19%. Even in recent weeks, we've seen it support the price quite strongly.
Yes. I think the big picture is that the macroeconomic or the risk premium is much smaller today than it used to be historically. So it's surprisingly small, I think. But I think just now, over the recent week, it's probably been $5, something like that. So it has been there, of course. There's some fundamental risks.
That's a lot. $5 is a lot.
Yes.
A lot of support.
Yes,
yeah.
but you have historically you have seen much more sensitivity in the oil price based on geopolitical events than what we have seen over the last 2 to 3 years. So in that sense, the oil market has become more robust. I think we have been almost used to these kind of very disruptive geopolitics. In terms of China, China had a demand in 2023 of crude oil that was 15.34. That has been lower in 2024 and 2025, breaking a very steady trend of growth. So China has been the engine of global oil markets growth. It's no longer. So I think the audience here also is acknowledging that basically the time of growth in China is over. And despite they have been filling their storage with at least 170 million barrels so far this year, it's the total crude import is most likely down. So I agree that it's not going to be the big impact. I think I agree with you. B is most probably going to determine the price next year.
Okay, I mean, Sarah, back to you. Let's talk about non-OPEC supply then. I mean, OPEC, obviously, it's 30% plus of the global market. I mean, there are other producers out there. But at these prices, how will non-OPEC plus supply, given their costs of production, fare? I mean, will they be influencing the market going forward or not? US, of course, being the largest producer.
Yeah, so typically the US is hugely...
Can you put your mic?
Yeah, sorry. So in the US, it's hugely impacted by the investment and by the private equity and the money that goes into the industry. So the decline curves there are huge if there is no investment into the oil and gas. And no matter what drill baby drill says or whatever, it's an economic factor in the US. People do not go by the policies more, they go by the economics. So if there is money going into the industry, then you will see that they can maintain the levels of production they have at this point in time. I don't see any growth really coming forward from the US. So non-OPEC, the biggest non-OPEC producer at this point in time, Brazil, Guyana, and West Africa. So with the projects in hand today, there isn't much that is coming additional to what we have. Now, for OPEC, it is important. You know, there is pressures within OPEC, huge pressures within OPEC to increase production because we have closed capacity, and as you know, closed capacity costs. And most of these countries do need to have that additional. So that will be the driver to bring more production into the market, and that's why I'm saying the prices probably in 26 will be kind of to the lower end simply because of the pressures to put more crude into the market with the production that is coming from outside of the OPEC. I don't see the change in the US, but the other countries probably they will be adding some more production.
Okay, all right, thank you, Sarah. Let's go to the next question. If the US and China, is that the correct question? Okay. That's new to me, but yes, okay, sorry, that is the correct one. No, it is right, yes. If the US and China increasingly operate outside the global rules-based system, other countries will follow and do the same, leading to rising uncertainty, drags on productivity, and lower economic growth. Of course, I mean, we're talking about now the global trading system, the whole tariff discussion that has been sort of triggered by President Trump, but you know, more importantly is how countries are reacting to that. Let's get the answer, and then we'll go to our panelists for their comments. Okay, so 70% think that this current sort of back and forth. Of course, it's not just China, the US with everyone in terms of its trade negotiations with Europe, with other countries in Asia. And of course, that's all going to impact oil demand at the end of the day, and shipping and trading, the subjects of concern to many over here. Yaran, let me go to you with that. How disruptive has this uncertainty around the future of trade, of tariffs, cost of exports, of imports been on the global economy? I mean, so far, I would say the global economy has fared quite well, given the uncertainty. What would you say?
Yes, in the first quarter, it was very low growth globally due to all this uncertainty. We have catched up in the second quarter on the normal pace, but we have lost the first quarter. So for certain, it has been already a damage to the global economy that has happened. Yes, we have seen the impact already.
Sarah, how did you vote? Did you agree or not? And how is it going to impact, do you think, oil demand, if at all, if this continues?
Well, I agree 100%. I think one of the issues is in most of these forecasts, we have not factored that properly because of the uncertainty and the amount of uncertainty that goes around, for example, inflation. You know, one of the factors here. In the US, for example, like I said, it's function of investment and economics. Now, the tariffs on metal will definitely impact the industry and will make it more costly. When it becomes more costly, people don't invest. So there are few elements here that will impact the industry which are not factored in at this point in time that will come and will be clear, but this is a huge disruption, no doubts.
Next question. Now, this is a subject that's on the program these 2 days, the dark shadow fleet. We've got actually a speech and a panel coming up here in the plenary on this topic because it's becoming ever more important and present and is not going away. The explosive growth of the dark shadow fleet now estimated to represent close to 20% now of the world's oil tankers. It poses one of the most urgent challenges to global shipping and trade. Of course, the dark shadow fleet becoming more prominent, since sanctions were imposed on Russia and, of course, other sanctioned countries as well. Agree or disagree? Is it one of the most important challenges to global shipping? Okay, 68%. Yaran, let me go to you with that. I get the sense that the market has learned to operate with this from a sort of supply point of view, not a lot of disruption because of this.
Yes, first let me say I'm surprised about the answer because I think we have discussed other topics just recently with global trade, with global geopolitics, etc., which I think is much more impactful. But I think for the shipping fuel consumption, this has some implications because this shadow fleet is burning very heavy, very sour, very inefficient crude in a very inefficient way. So maybe the consumption is bigger than we know, but we have very little reporting on that also. So I think it's big impact on shipping fuel consumption, but on global shipping and trade, I think I would rather disagree with this statement.
Okay, I mean, Sarah, give us your take. I mean, obviously, that's, we're talking about, shadow fleet is because of sanctioned oil still going to, Iranian oil, that includes Russian oil, going to countries like China, for example, India. We've seen the headlines around Russian oil into India recently from Donald Trump. How did you answer this question?
I agree. I'm sorry to disagree with you, but it's become now de facto there. It's been there for a while, and it has systematically, consistently been there. But Diala, if we seriously wanted to tackle this, it's not the shipping itself. Let's see where is the money going. And if you look, this is not the only challenge. The crypto is the other challenge, because a lot of this trading behind this, you follow the money and you can solve this problem.
And I mean, in terms of the money, I mean, then you're talking about sort of the secondary sanctions as well, and the measures on that. There has been talk about that, obviously, by the US in particular. Yarand, is that having an impact, secondary sanctions on countries like China, in terms of the banking system and where the revenue from this oil trade goes?
I think not very much. I think there's been some, what should I say, attempt from China and India to, for a short period, signal that they want to listen to some of these secondary sanctions. But so there's been a few signals, but not really to a big extent, I think. So still they're importing a lot of Russian oil despite the sanctions.
Okay, I mean, I think one of the big concerns is obviously that it's unmonitored, and so environmentally there are concerns if something should happen, etc., for any cleanup measures that may be, and of course insurance and all those industries that are impacted. Okay, we have one more question to put to all of you. Energy transition. The energy transition is dead, or and I'll explain that, is dead, and we are now in the era of energy transformation, meaning, you know, the energy transition for many years has been talked about as an either-or situation. We either have to go full-on energy transition, i.e. change tomorrow, versus energy security, or, you know, energy transformation. Are we now adjusting to the fact that this transition is indeed is exactly what that's going to be? It's going to take some time. So agree or disagree? The outright transition tomorrow is dead, and we're having to adjust our approach. Okay, that's 61%. Sarah, let me go to you with that. Do you agree that the thinking around the transition has adjusted in the last 2-3 years?
Definitely, because, you know, if you remember, when the first reports and first agreements was to stop investing in oil and gas. Oil and gas is bad, and, you know, stop. Most of the banks wouldn't even fund oil and gas. Now this trend is completely changed. Not only that, many of the IOCs who had these big plans to change it, they came back to the oil and gas. Why? Because the oil and gas, they could see that the world and the way we were thinking about transition would not work. And we said it from the beginning, this is not going to work. But now I think there's more consensus on energy, except for the US, of course. There's more consensus worldwide on how this transition is going to happen, and, you know, the acceptance that we need all kind of energy in order to maintain that transition, and that's the current situation.
Yarand, I mean, how did you vote? And give us a European perspective. You're based in Norway.
Yeah.
You know, Europe has always been seen at the forefront of the transition in terms of from a political point of view. How did you vote, and why?
Yeah, I voted number 2, but I think this question about energy transition or energy addition is also a question about which time horizon are you looking at. I would agree that it's an addition if you look at the next 2 decades. But if you look at towards the end of the century, for example, then I think we can learn from all other technology shifts. When a new technology is cheaper and better, everybody is changing in the end. You know, the steam locomotives using coal was completely dominating the world. After 20 years, it was completely dead. House warming with coal, completely out of the market, etc. So mobile telephony, nobody's using the Nokia anymore. Everybody has a smartphone. So a new technology will always outcompete the old technology. But eventually, solar, wind, and batteries will do that, but it will take longer time. So short term, next 2 decades, still a lot of scope for oil, for example. Very long term, oil will be a very important business still, but not as an energy business, as a material business. That is the real value of oil, to produce materials if you talk 100 years from now. So still an oil business, but the transition in the energy market will happen.
Yarand Raistad and Sarah Akbar, thank you so much. A round of applause, please, for our panelists for their comments and insight. Thank you so much. Please take your seats. To get us started on talking about a lot of the topics we'll be addressing also later on today. We're going to now continue our session up here on stage. I'm delighted to welcome and invite up here to deliver the keynote speech of this morning His Excellency Dr. Sheikh Abdullah bin Ahmed Al Khalifa, Minister of Transportation and Telecoms of the Kingdom of Bahrain, who will be addressing the dark fleet, and we'll see what his opinion on that is. Please, a big welcome. Thank you very much.
Your Highness, Sheikh Saleh bin Mohammed al-Sharqi, Your Highness Sheikh Rashid bin Mohammed al-Sharqi, Your Highnesses, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to address you at the 13th Energy Market Forum in Fujairah, a hub that stands at the very heart of the global energy trade. We meet at a critical juncture for our industry, facing challenges that threaten not only our supply chains, but the foundational principles of international commerce. Today, I want to talk about a growing menace, the dark fleet, and how we can work together to secure the critical arteries of global trade. For years, the maritime world has been grappling with substandard shipping. But the recent proliferation of the dark fleet, also known as the shadow fleet, is a new, more dangerous phase. These are vessels that operate outside the bounds of international law, often using deceptive practices like forging documents, disabling AIS transponders, and conducting illicit ship-to-ship transfers in open water to evade sanctions and scrutiny. These ships are not merely a nuance. They pose a severe threat to maritime safety, environmental protection, and the integrity of our financial systems. Many are aging, poorly maintained, and uninsured, making them a ticking bomb for potential oil spills and maritime accidents. A major incident involving a dark fleet tanker could have catastrophic environmental and economic consequences, especially in environmentally sensitive regions. They undermine the global regulatory framework we have all worked so hard to build, creating an uneven playing field that penalizes legitimate, compliant operators. The threat of the dark fleet is magnified by its focus on the world's most vital maritime choke points. These narrow straits and canals like the Strait of Hormuz, Bab el-Mandeb, and the Suez Canal are the lifeline of global trade. Over 80% of global trade by volume and significant portion of the world's energy supply transits through these few critical passages. The Strait of Hormuz in particular is an artery of paramount importance. As the only sea passage from the Arabian Gulf, it is the gateway for a significant share of the world's oil and natural gas exports. Any disruption here has a ripple effect across the global economy, affecting prices, supply, and security. Protecting these checkpoints is not just a regional responsibility. It is a global imperative. The dark fleet's activities in and around these areas were by design or accident introduce an unacceptable level of risk. So what can we do? I noticed in question 7 earlier that 68% of you agree that the dark fleet would represent 20% of the world's oil tankers. And the solution lies in a threefold approach that combines international cooperation, technological innovation, and robust enforcement. First, we must strengthen international collaboration. This includes sharing intelligence and coordinating with the global bodies like the International Maritime Organization, the IMO, and other relevant organizations. We need a unified front to close the legal loopholes that the dark fleet exploits, including those related to a registered and to flag registries and insurance. Second, we must leverage technology. We've seen significant advancement in satellite imagery, AI-driven tracking, and data analytics that can help us identify and monitor suspicious vessel behavior, even when AIS is turned off. Fujairah, as a leading global bunkering and trading hub, can be a leader in adopting and promoting these technologies. And third, we need stronger enforcement. This requires port states to conduct more rigorous inspections and to hold non-compliant vessels accountable. We must work to impose severe penalties on vessels, owners, and operators who engage in illicit activities, making it economically unviable to be part of the dark fleet. This challenge is complex, but our commitment to a secure, stable, and sustainable energy market must be unwavering. By tracking the dark fleet and safeguarding our critical maritime arteries, we not only protect our economies, but also the safety of our seas and the well-being of our future generations. Your Highness, thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this forum, and I wish the 13th Energy Market Forum and the participants all the very success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. We're going to now invite a few panel experts to sort of review and dig a little deeper into the subject that His Excellency mentioned so eloquently. Let's just kick off with another survey question. Clickers out for getting the room's opinion on the consequences. What's at stake if indeed, as His Excellency says, this problem is not tackled? What's at stake if the dark fleet continues unchecked? 10 seconds. Collapse of maritime rules, major oil spill risk, or distorted energy? What's the biggest at stake? Distorted energy markets. Welcome the view in the room there. So a major oil spill we have seen I think there was the Malacca Straits or somewhere off the coast of Malaysia in recent years that two dark fleet vessels ran into each other with their transponders off. That's a problem. Let's go and bring up our three special guests visiting. Caroline Yang, CEO of Hong Lam Marine and former president of the Singapore Shipping Association. If you would take your spot at one of the panels or one of the podiums. And Shrikant Vaida, former chairman of Indian Oil Corporation. Shrikant, if you would also take a podium. And Captain Rishi Niati, CEO of Emirat Maritime, a UAE-based company in the shipping space. Of course, all of these distinguished panelists are very experienced in this area, and we very much welcome their views. Thank you for coming up. Caroline, I'm going to kick off with you in terms of reaction to some of the voting that you've seen, particularly from a Singaporean perspective. Of course, you are the world's leading bunker hubs, massive under anchorage shipping there, but also the biggest collection of dark fleet. You can see it from your window. I mean, I was in Singapore 2 weeks ago, and literally all the ships are just sitting right there under anchorage. But most of the dark fleet tend to be hovering in that corner of the world. How big a problem is it? Is the problem overstated? Your thoughts?
Okay, I have to say that the problem is overstated. I think the ships that you see in the anchorage, they are all good ships. I want to say that for the oil tankers, it is about 20%, but for the global fleet in the world, it is about 2%. But we do see that if you talk about the incident that you mentioned.
Just hold the mic as close as you can. Yeah.
Yeah. So the incident that happened on the two ships that collided, it did happen, I think, in Indonesian waters. So I think it is not a Singapore issue, as His Highness, His Excellency has mentioned. It is a collective responsibility and the willpower to take actions to prevent these dark fleet from coming into port. So I think when you look at ship profiling before they come into port, how do you go for enhanced inspections? You look at the AIS shutting off the history, the spoofing of the AIS, the STS transfers that they do, the verifiable P&I coverage, and a few other factors that you can actually profile these ships. And when they come into port, then you do the enhanced inspection.
But you still sort of are advocating that it's not as big a problem as is being perceived.
I think it is a problem. It is a big problem. And I think that is the global maritime community position. But is it a bigger problem in Singapore? I would disagree with that.
Shrikant, India, of course, is one of the biggest importers of Russian oil, which is sanctioned by the G7. So by default, you are contributing to the opportunity to develop the dark fleet by importing lots and lots of sanctioned oil. That's just a thesis. I'm not advocating it, but I wanted to get your opinion on it, because nothing seems to be impacting the slowdown of the growth of the dark fleet. And from an India perspective, your thoughts of why nothing's impacting it, and will India continue to do what they do?
Okay, just before I go.
The microphone is close.
Before I go to your question directly, I just want to say that whenever sanctions and restrictions are imposed, an alternative route develops. This is very natural. Like in 2010, we had this Iran oil for goods that emerged as an alternate. And same way now it is emerging. Those sanctions and restrictions are very good in intent. They don't really fulfill the requirements. Now in the accountability chain, I can say the chain of accountability to prevent dark fleet, there are 9 elements I can list out, starting from the producer, the ship owners, the regulators, the agencies which insure them, the ports, the regulator authorities, so on and so forth. So I think every chain has to be tightened, every link has to be tightened, and the moment one of the link goes loose, this dark fleet problem goes up. In fact, when that survey was there, His Excellency said that 60% agreed for the dark fleet is a problem, but you should also see nearly 40% didn't see it as a problem. So my point is, this is an outcome of sanctions, and we need to tackle it at the very root of it. As far as the point of you have said about India, most of the oil which we got as Indian Oil, we are a national oil company. So we did a huge amount of due diligence because we don't want to get swayed by the price part of it. So with full due diligence, we managed to get the right fleet, the clean fleet, as I can say, to get the oil.
Captain Rishi Niati, you are an operator of ships, you are sailing. Your thoughts on it, is it as big a problem as the headlines are giving it every day, or how do you perceive this as a challenge?
Good morning, Assalamu alaikum. Nice to be in Fujairah. It's a lot cooler than Dubai. We run a ship owning company, ship management company called Ya'rud Maritime, based in Dubai. We run oil tankers, 9 oil tankers. For us, with regards to dark fleet, our primary focus is making sure we are in compliance by obviously not touching barrels which have sanctions or price caps. But more than that, what we are doing is for ship-to-ship operations, making sure that the ships that we are interfacing with are also not sanctioned. The oil origin is not sanctioned as well. So that's a part of our due diligence, being a ship owner and an operator of tankers, is not just not carrying sanctioned oil or price cap oil, but also making sure that the ships that we interface with and the oil that we get does not come from sanctioned entities.
Do you see any progression, Captain, in the enforcement? We started the year with the end of the Biden administration identifying a number of new ships to sanction, and the expectation was that that would have a real impact in curtailing, and then through the year we've seen it's been a fairly non-effective. Is there a progression now with the new administration of the US policing this more robustly? Do you feel that as a ship operator?
So first, a disclaimer, Ya'rud Maritime does not carry any sanctioned oil or call any countries with or without price cap. But
you still have to comply, as you said.
Correct,
so
correct.
You have to read the regulations, you have to understand the regulations.
Correct. So I was just going to the next point, is that I agree with Mr. Shrikant. And to the best of my knowledge, Russian molecules are not sanctioned as long as you're not a part of G7 and as long as you're not taking insurance and other services from G7 countries. There is, to the best of my knowledge, there is no sanctions against Russian molecules into a third country which does not take services from G7 countries. So there is a fine line, and there's a reason why Americans and Europeans have done this, because they want this oil to move. The Americans want this oil to move because if you completely remove close to about 6 million barrels of Russian oil, which works out to be more than 14% of seaborne oil, there will be significant price inflation of oil, which would be felt by the American and European consumers. So again, Ya'rud Maritime does not do it. However,
say it one more time, please.
Yeah,
Just joking.
Want to be very clear here.
I wanted just to get another question up on the board. Why should legitimate ports and shippers care about what is ultimately G7 sanctions, OECD? Why should legitimate ports and shippers care about these dark fleet, the scale of them? Reputational damage, legal and sanctions. 10 seconds, please, on that. Legal sanctions exposure or crew safety. Are these the reasons? Which one is the most legitimate reason? And get the views on that. 62% legal and sanctions exposure. A good reason to care. It costs a lot of money if you violate, potentially. But Caroline, I wanted to get your thoughts on, is the dark fleet simply another sort of consequence of what is a Western G7 concern, that this is not a global South concern, this is not an Asia concern, that you're having to absorb what is a G7 Western concern, and that's creating a bigger dark fleet, but ultimately not a problem, not an issue for Asia and this global South. Just comment on that idea.
Yeah, first point, You are right, it is a G7 plus sanctions. It is not actually a UN sanctions. It is a G7 plus sanctions. And actually, if it is not UN sanctions, they are not going against the UNCLOS. But it is sanctions, and many countries have agreed to these sanctions. And because they have agreed to these sanctions, they need to comply. So all the measures taken to prevent the dark fleet from actually flourishing, it is the duty of every single port and every single flag industry, and also the IMO.
Srikanth, your thoughts on, just again from an India perspective, usually, I mean, India is non-aligned country, but ultimately it walks in a certain way with all of the G7 Western democracies and all of that stuff. But India is an outlier here. Does it perceive it that way? Does it perceive it as not their issue, not their sanctions?
I don't think it's an outlier. Outlier will be a very hard term. As he was saying, that
well, you import X million barrels of sanctioned Western G7 sanctioned oil every day.
See, actually, we have always said that the oil that we buy is purely a commercial decision. It is not a political decision. So when we buy oil from Russia, we buy it because of the commercial reason. Now there is a different color being given to it, a political color. So it was, see, as you are well aware, before 2022, we hardly had 0.2% of the Russian oil in the Indian kitty because it didn't make commercial sense. But post the Ukraine war, because of the discounts, the oil suddenly made sense, and it now is about 30-35%. So it was purely a commercial decision, which we are, bound to help the people of the country to get cheap oil. So that was the reason why we went for that oil, and that is the only reason that we are buying for it. We are not going for any other political angle into this, because that is reading something into it which is not actually there.
Captain, your thoughts on the survey result there? Why should shippers and ports be concerned or care is legal and sanctions exposure. Is that working as a sufficient incentive? It would appear that the scale of the dark fleet growth would indicate that not too concerned.
So again, I want to say that the Russian molecules are not sanctioned. They are, if you are a G7 country, then you do not import the Russian oil. You can still import Russian gas. However, if any ship takes the services of a G7 country, be it a broker, be it an insurer, then that's not allowed.
And there is a price cap as well.
And there's a price cap as well if you want to take services of the G7 countries. If you're doing business which does not involve G7 countries at all, whether it's your insurer, whether it's your broker, whether it's your crew, you can carry Russian molecules at whatever price. This is my understanding. Again, for the record, Emirat Maritime does not carry any of this. But my point is...
Are you sure?
100%. 100%, yeah. Most of my ships are trading in America.
I'm only joking.
So again, going back, there is a reason why the G7 countries have done this. A parallel case is Iranian molecules. Iranian molecules are sanctioned, and India cannot import Iranian molecules.
But ultimately, it would appear at the moment not enforced. Let's go to the last question, on why has sanction enforcement failed? And that's not just in current times. Generally, it seems to be a failure. But in this instance, why 10 seconds has sanctions failed? West wants oil to flow, which we've heard from the panel. Global South resistance. Ports and others, weak enforcement tools. West wants oil to flow. What did you vote, Caroline? Why do you think these sanctions generally are not having the outcome they're desired?
I didn't vote because I believe it is a mixture of all three.
All three, right.
Yes.
So now, what if you had to vote one over the other?
If I have to vote, I would think that in every sanctions, how do you make it successful? It has to be, the enforcement has to be swift, stern, robust, and continuous. And I think that's not happening on a global basis.
Not to Singaporean standards. You guys tend to do that stuff pretty well. Shrikant, your final words on the answer of this survey?
Actually, that's question number 4. The number 1, the West also wants the oil to flow.
Yeah.
Because that will create a huge volatility in the oil market. And it is in everybody's
And in that regard, they're being successful. If that's the subcontext, the oil is flowing, everybody's happy, prices are relatively moderate.
You said it. Actually, the system has adjusted itself to whatever sanctions we have said, because the fundamental reason is we can't just wish away the Russian oil.
Yes.
There'll be huge volatility in the market, and that's the reality.
Well, nobody wants that. Captain, last word to you.
100% point number 1. West wants the oil to flow. It's very easy. If West does not want the Russian molecules to flow, they can sanction it like they've done with Iranians. They've not done it.
They've not done it, and that's clear, and so everybody get on with business. Thank you so much to our panelists. I wanted to say thank you to Caroline Yang, our award winner last night. Congratulations. And Shrikant Vaida as well. Congratulations. Thank you for your time. And Captain Rishi Niati, thank you so much for joining us. So please return to your seats. And I'll hand the floor back to Diala, who will administrate the International Energy Journalism Awards.
Thank you very much, Sean, and to our panel. As Sean said, we're delighted to be announcing the 2025 MENA Terminals International Energy Journalism Awards. These were founded 8 years ago to celebrate excellence in print and broadcast reporting and communications, covering the Middle East energy sector, of course. An international selection committee, just as with our process with the Aramco Awards, an international selection committee comprising of current and former leading energy journalists. I'm privileged to be one of those on the committee. They're invited, and we submit a list of candidates for consideration in 5 categories. These names are then collated and they're sent back to the selection committee to review and to score according to a formula. And then we end up with top three ranked nominees, and they're all the top 3 are invited to the forum and to the ceremony. And we're going to be announcing those top 3 and indeed the final winner today. And they will be coming up to receive their prizes. We'll do that after I've announced everybody. We'll go through every category, show you who the nominees are, the top 3 who won, and then I will be at the end of that inviting His Highness Sheikh Saleh up to present the accolades to each of our very well-deserved winners. So let's go with the first category, which is Middle East Media Arabic Language. I'm going to take this mic so I can actually look at the screen. I feel a bit left out when I can't see it. So there you go. We have our top 3 there. Dr. Caroline Faraj, Nadine Hani, and Nada Abdessalam from those 3 organizations, Al Arabiya, CNN Arabic, and CNBC Arabia. And I'm sure many of you here are familiar with, I'm very delighted to say, 3 ladies up on the screen. So, and the winner is Dr. Caroline Faraj. She will be coming up a bit later to receive her award. Many congratulations. Second category, Middle East Media English Language this time. We have Jennifer Aguinaldo, Richard Dean, and Rachel Kelly from Infralogic, Dubai Eye, and The National. Again, very familiar faces to all of us here in the room, I'm sure. And the winner is Mr. Richard Dean. Congratulations. Okay, the third category, International Energy Industry Specialist Media. James Cocaine, Managing Editor of Energy Intelligence, Bashar Halabi, Senior Energy Correspondent at Argus Media, and Yusra Samaha from Energy Intelligence as well. Energy Intelligence seems to be making its mark there. And the winner is Bashar Halabi. He seems to be popular. Fourth category is International Financial Media. We have Emma Graham from CNBC, Mohammed Sergi from Semaphore Gulf, and Lubna Bouza from Sky News Arabian. And some of these names have been actually voted in the top 3 continuously every year. So clearly, they're very well deserving, and obviously considered one of the top in their game. And the winner is for this year, Lubna. Congratulations. 5th category, we are addressing Corporate Communications Executive of the Year. Ayman Al-Musallam from SABIC, Colin Joyce from ADNOC Gas, and Annie Evangeli, manager at ADNOC Drilling. Communications specialists on whom we all rely very much. And the winner is Colin Joyce. Congratulations. And then there is a separate category at the end of this, which is International Energy Journalism Award for Lifetime Achievement for veteran journalists who have made their mark over, not to make anyone sound too old, but a number of decades and in many different aspects. And I'm delighted to announce that the winner of the award this year is Frank Kane, editor-at-large, Arabian Gulf Business Insight. Frank wears many hats, not just Arabian Gulf Business Insight, and he'll be coming up to accept his award. So without further ado, I'm delighted to invite, maybe for the last time these 2 days, Sheikh Saleh, we'll get you up on stage. We've tired you out, but please, if you would come up to present the awards to these very deserving journalists. And I'm going to call them up one by one. Alina, you're going to give His Highness the awards in turn. Let's start with Dr. Caroline Faraj, please. Congratulations. If Caroline could come up, there she is. And photographers, I don't know if you want to come a bit closer to take photos, that's good. Fantastic. Caroline, if you could just wait on the side, because we'd like to take a big photo of the group at the end. Richard Dean, congratulations. He's on his way up. Where is Richard? There he is, coming up from the left with me. Congratulations to Richard. Of course, a very familiar voice on Dubai Eye. Congratulations, Bashar Al-Halabi. August Media making its mark. Congratulations, Bashar. Lubna Bouza. Congrats. I think Lubna has been in the top 3 for the last 2-3 years. Very well deserved, Lubna. All the best. Congratulations. And Communications Executive of the Year, Colin Joyce. Congratulations. And last but not least, Frank Kane, many, many congratulations. A big round of applause, please, for lifetime achievement to Frank Kane. If we could please have all of you now come up to join His Highness for a group photo. Bear with us while we position you for that. And also, please, Mr. Gatia Jabouri from MENA Terminals, who are the sponsors of the awards. Mr. Gatti, if you could come and join the photo, please. Thank you. A big round of applause again. Well done, everybody. Best. Thank you to His Highness as well. Congratulations. Congratulations. I'm going to hand back now. Oh, all the best, Frank. Well deserved, well deserved. I'm going to hand back now to Sean. And before we go on to the next panel on stage, we're going to thank His Highness and thank him very much for attending the forum and wish him well. Thank you to His Highness, His Highnesses, I should say. Thank you.
While we're wishing His Highness and his entourage the best and thank them for their patronage these last 2 days, I'd like to draw everybody's attention to the next survey question before we bring up the panel, which is an international trading panel. And I'd like to ask everybody to find their clickers and give us their views on where trading is at in what we are seeing an increasingly fragmented world. There was a significant article in Foreign Affairs last month by the former US trade representative of the Obama administration who said the international trading system is dead, which is quite a bold and significant statement that as we move into a more sort of unilateral approach to trade, particularly by the world's two biggest economies, that is a challenge potentially for traders to navigate, but also an opportunity. So survey, what is the most important strategy for traders to adopt to thrive in a fragmented world without a functioning WTO framework? Which, again, that was declared in the Foreign Affairs magazine, probably the most influential geopolitical and foreign affairs publication in Washington, that WTO is itself dysfunctional. So traders must diversify partnerships, strengthen compliance systems, build regional networks, adopt flexibility, agility, and digital tools, or replace multilateral structures with bilateral agreements, which we're seeing, obviously, the Trump administration actively doing. So in that regard, some meaty things to think about there. What is the most important strategy for traders to adopt to thrive in this fragmented world? 10 seconds on that to vote, and we'll then invite our panelists up to comment. Okay, there is the result. And as we invite our panelists up, I'd invite everybody that likes a comfortable seat to come forward and enjoy all the comfortable seats in the front of the room, if indeed you would like to do so. So let me start by inviting up Sheikh Khalid Ahmed Al Sabah, Managing Director of International Marketing at the KPC, Kuwait Petroleum Corporation. Dave Ernsberger, Co-President of S&P Global Commodity Insights, and Tom Baker, Managing Director at Vitol Bahrain. If you would all come to the stage and take up your podium positions, the dating game will begin. And everybody else who likes a comfortable seat, please come to the fore. So, Sheikh Khalid, I'd like to generally get your views. The result of this question has already been up. Is this a false thesis, ultimately, that this scale of disruption, this scale of the breakdown in the global trading rules system, right? There's rules, there's laws, international laws, there's WTO laws that took years and decades to put together on top of the GATT, which was there before, the GATT, and then WTO. That's suddenly crumbling. Does that present a challenge or an opportunity or a bit of both for traders? And you're somebody who's literally in the process of setting up a trading company, KPC Trading, just opening its doors. So your thoughts on that as a thesis? And the survey results, not on the board, but if it could come up, we'll take it.
Well, thank you, Sean, for inviting me to the Energy Market Forum. And you always
Again, I'm going to do the repeated microphone.
You always choose the most difficult question with me, so I'll take this one. Well,
in the trading world, we have to realize that, we have to comply with the rules and regulation. Either it's WTO or it's sanctions, whatever type of, let's say, rules that we have to frame. The traders is where they find the opportunity and how they can capture this opportunity within the legal frame that they can do it. Yes, there is challenges. Yes, there is many obstacles sometimes when it comes to this way. But I guess the rule and the job of the trading is to find the way just how to go around it. Trader's job is to find where is the arbitrage, where they can.
And does this present the opportunity for more arbitrage?
It's an opportunity, but sometimes it's limited to sectors rather than other sectors. Because opportunities, let's say, if European are sanctioning gas, then this one has to reroute and through different routes, maybe different direction. Ultimately, they have to find a way how they can supply other markets through the legal frame that they have to do it with.
Tom Baker, Vitol Bahrain, recently taken up your position since we were here last, so congratulations to you, and obviously taking over responsibility for Vitol's operations in the Middle East and all of Africa. Your thoughts on the thesis, whether it's a bit of a false dawn or a false narrative or not? I mean, at the end of the day, all of you and your peers never made more money than 2 years ago when the Ukraine war happened, and one thought this is a very dysfunctional world, but ultimately in there lies opportunity. So your thought on the thesis of the question and whether it's more opportunity or challenge for traders?
Thank you, Sean, and thank you for the invitation here today. Well, definitely a mixture, I would say. I mean, you referenced 22 and 23. That was a combination of sanctions coming in, but we had guidance, we had warnings, there were wind-down periods. You also had a period of inefficiencies, lack of products going into certain regions, lack of refining capacity, uncertainty about where product flows and oil flows were going to go. So I think those were things that were fairly predictable to an extent, but made for favorable conditions in terms of trading. It was volatility, but what we call good volatility. 2025 has been quite different in that respect. I think we've seen sanctions come in almost overnight in places, which have caused challenges on vessels being trapped with oil on them, oil in chains. Obviously, the tariffs and Liberation Day created a lot of volatility as well. For the most part, those tariffs have not impacted energy flows too much, except for certain exceptions like LPG going into China. I think most people see raw commodities and energy as a vital industry and don't want to jeopardize it. And certainly things like gasoline flows into the US are seen as political as well. So we haven't seen too much influence on the tariff side, and to an extent that is more predictable. But I would say, the way that Vitol looks at it, we've been much more on the defensive so far this year, trying to understand where the rules are going to change, what new sanctions are going to come in. We've certainly increased our compliance functions. We've spent more time trying to talk to governmental organizations to understand where regulation is heading. But even then, the outcomes can be quite binary. I mean, we take, for example, now the next EU sanctions package and how they might treat products derived from Russian crude oil. If they adopt one mechanism of mass balancing, it has very little impact on the market. If they adopt one which isn't mass balancing, it has a huge impact on the market, and we don't know which way they're going to go. So that kind of uncertainty is pretty hard to trade, and so we have to be a little bit more defensive. Yes, there are opportunities within that as well, and I think all of those strategies on the board apply, flexibility and agility in particular. But certainly it's a combination of both defensive and waiting to see where the opportunities turn up.
Dave, as the curator of some of the world's most important oil price benchmarks, are we seeing this sort of breakdown in trading rules? As one of the answers in the previous survey questions was distorting energy markets. How do you see this interfacing with the efficiency of the energy markets delivering an efficient price format?
Thanks, Sean. I think that the effectiveness of an international environment like the WTO framework here has always been overestimated. When it comes to trading, when it comes to how molecules move around the world. And I think that the question here suggests there's a world where it won't be functioning. And I think on the flip side, when things start to break down, that's always overestimated as well. So I don't see that the WTO had a spectacularly important impact on norms of trade when it was at its height. And I don't think that its sort of erosion, if you will, necessarily changes trading norms too much either. And what I mean by that is trading norms are very, very important. And so, all five of these proposed...
And a trading norm, just by some casual definition?
I'll come to what I mean by that, Sean. Thank you. All five of these seem like good tactics. I'm not a trader, so it'll be for you two to decide which of these is most important for your businesses. But in the end, I would have picked either number 1 or number 5, because trading norms are, if there is an issue in the market with you and your counterpart, you find a way to resolve it in a way that reflects your relationship. Your precedent in your relationship, your expectations in your relationship. Ultimately, whether it's been COVID times, post-COVID, supply chain disruption times, any time over the last 30 years, the relationships between two counterparts have always been most sacrosanct, I would say. And so it's ultimately having stronger bilateral agreements and having a more diversified set of relationships that you believe in that I think will take traders through this time. Not just traders, but every company in the supply chain. And that's why I say WTO is always overdone anyways, because if your relationship breaks down with a counterpart, you're going to see each other in court and not so much WTO to save you there.
Let's go to the next survey question and just give the next survey question on have we got a question 3? Is there anybody in the booth over there? I can't see. Yes. How will escalating tariffs and sanctions reshape global oil and LNG trade flows the most in 26, next year? Tariffs and sanctions will divert flows eastward towards Asia. 2, arbitrage opportunities will grow as trade routes fragment, or Western demand may rely on clean barrels while deepening east-west divergence. How will escalating tariffs and sanctions reshape global oil and LNG trade flows? If we can vote 10 seconds on that. Captain, or Sheikh, I wanted to get your thoughts on the idea that the normal flows and the bilateral relationships Dave referenced there, but ultimately this creates nearly a dual playing field. That we've talked before about the dark fleet. There's a universe over here, and then there's a universe of whatever clean and the opposite of dark is, and that this dual system creates a challenge. Your thoughts on that becoming baked into the market?
Okay, well, I'll comment on this one.
Yes.
First of all, there is an energy mix which the whole world needs. And I'm going to talk about the oil in the beginning. So let's assume there is 100 million barrel needed
every
globally.
Day.
Well, this 100 million has to come from supplier and come to a consumer. The geopolitical situation sometimes lead this one, so it's going to change the route of this oil. But by the end of every day, those barrels have to find a home. So the sanctions and let's say the tariffs, let's say, all what they do is that they divert the route of the oil and the gas from destination to another. But by the end of the day, it's a whole cycle which has to meet everywhere. Coming back to your question about the dark fleet.
And a dual system.
And dual system. The dark fleet was created by the sanctions, because there is what created the dark fleet now if we talk globally. Dark fleet is a resultant of, let's say, a demand that cannot meet by, let's say, the law or the international law. So there is two ways. People want to make economics. They have to supply some countries. They cannot supply them with the regular fleet, yet the dark fleet will service this one, the gray fleet will service this one with different economics. You know, the risk and exposure about dark and gray fleet, it's been growing so much lately. And it seems that I would say the market gave a space for those fleets to grow. There is
Say that again,
the market gave the dark and the shadow fleet to grow because of the sanctions and the tariffs. People need oil. Those oil has to move. And if we mark it down, we can see it. All what it's doing, it's going to a different direction.
And is that a problem? Is that a problem? I mean, if the market's working?
In my opinion, it's been growing, and it's going to create a lot of problem in the future. Now, it's a substance, it's a market that we cannot ignore. We cannot say that they don't exist. They're not shells. They are more or less now quite substantial, even determining the destination of a lot of crude and product. So if those is not regulated by any international, let's say, umbrella, this can cause a huge problem. I mean, now all what we see probably is a couple of collisions or small accidents here and there. But those uninsured, unflagged, moving from A to B, and those, in my opinion, those are moving bombs if they keep growing and nobody is leashing them. So yes, I think there has to be a way to put governance for those, at least, so we know where they're going and we know how to solve any problem if it occurs. And now I think, as we see, that this fleet is growing a lot, and it's taking market share. Started with let's say crude, now crude and product. I think it's going to go to gas very soon. It has to be governed by entity that really limit any exposure might happen in the future for those.
Tom, your thoughts on the survey question and the result, again, 39, it's pretty evenly spread across the three. Escalating tariffs reshape global oil and trade flows the most in 26. How you voted, what are your thoughts on this?
I voted for one. I mean,
which is ultimately a continuation.
Yes, exactly. I think that's the most obvious result of what's going to continue with escalations. It doesn't look like there's any wind down coming on any of the sanctions front at the moment. And the natural home, India, China, obviously some has been going west into areas like Brazil or into Africa, but I think that will continue the way things are heading, and obviously the 19th sanction package and what's been debated at the moment is likely to push that forward. Number two was less obvious for me, only from the point of view that the markets are getting very efficient at repricing almost instantly. You know, when a new sanctions comes out or a new energy flow is established, then the market realizes that very quickly. They adjust their balances, paper curves change, freight changes, and normally those arbitrage opportunities are shut down fairly quickly. They do create second-order effects, of course. So the fact that Europe is having to pull distillate from a long distance can create supply gaps, can create volatility in the front end of distillate in Europe, for example, which we've seen so far this year, which has been quite spiky. So there are second-order opportunities, whether it's a direct arbitrage opportunity or not. I think that's open for debate. And then the Western demand on clean barrels, yes, I would tend to agree that certainly seems to be the direction of travel at the moment. And again, I completely agree with Sheikh Khaled's comments that you are creating a two-tier, maybe even a three-tier market where you have clean barrels, you have dirty barrels, and then there's a gray area in between as well, where some countries...
Turn your transponder off, turn it on. I mean...
I think that's probably out of the gray area, but into the dark area. But I think the gray area would be where certain counterparties are happy to handle it, certain countries, it's in a borderline, and how those flows travel will be quite defining in terms of price. I mean, so far this year, if you look at something like naphtha, naphtha discounts last year were on Russian barrels were very tight to normal barrels because there was plenty of demand for the Russian. And then the Koreans changed their minds, and that was slightly a self-sanctioning process. And suddenly the price dropped $30 or $40 a ton for Russian-related naphtha, even though sanctions didn't apply to those barrels. So, and then the market reprices and comes back again. So those gray barrels can move around, and maybe there's opportunities, but I think most of these sanctions provide arbitrage opportunities for companies maybe other than ourselves.
And do you see I mean, number one or number three, that that this is a now permanent reality, that we talk of these things as like, you know, a lot of the discussion this year was at the moments in which there seemed to be a push by the Trump administration to resolve the war in Ukraine, that things would go back to quote unquote normal. As a house rule, does Vitol see this as temporary still, or is this now permanent, or does it matter how you perceive it? It's just every day.
It matters how we perceive it, and every day we're putting on risks, whether it would be paper-related or physical-related, depending on how we see both tariffs and sanctions playing out. I like to think it would not be a permanent state. Certainly, as you say, halfway through this year, it looked like Russia-Ukraine was moving in the right direction. Iran was even moving in the right direction. We've seen sanctions being removed from Syria. And then suddenly there are turning points, negotiations break down, and you're moving in a different direction. I think we're all watching Social Truth. You know, we're trying to understand which way the next set of sanctions in the EU are going to go. What are the drones going to do? Obviously, right now, the direction of travel looks quite negative, but I certainly don't think we're in a permanent state. I just think we're in a very volatile state in terms of trying to find the right balance.
Dave, your thoughts on that? Ultimately, the pricing system, the benchmarks, they're all built for whatever the normal world was prior to all of this recent turbulence. Are they still fit for purpose? Is every day a new day? You have to reassess? Or how do you see this era and its temporary or permanent and its impact on the pricing structures that we all rely on every day?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So I think that the challenges for benchmarks that were generated by the contortions of the market over the last 4 years have shown that they're not only fit for purpose, but they're evolving with the industry. And I mean, I don't have the time, and maybe the audience hasn't got the interest to go into the really detailed stuff about whether certain kinds of oil could be reflected in certain kinds of oil benchmarks. But we've been through that with the entire industry.
Well, I suppose on that point, in the sense that in all the noise, one wants to keep a focus on what is part of a changing global flow, like WTI into Asia was happening anyway and continues to. It's not a relation to disruption.
Yeah, I mean, some changes in the global market are evolutionary in nature and take place over time. Like WTI Midland flowing into Europe, flowing into the Asia, is a decade-long story which markets needed to evolve towards as the markets themselves gradually changed. And then some are shocks, right? Some changes in market dynamics are actual shocks. So whether you can or cannot handle a barrel of Russian oil was a shock for the market, right? But I think, yeah, benchmarks are absolutely fit for purpose. They will always need to change, and they always do. And I think that they're going to have to evolve with these market conditions just like everything else.
On that, in terms of the fit for purpose, ultimately the resilience of the market, despite all of this turbulence, indicates quite a robust pricing structure.
I would say so. I mean, benchmarks have a role to play in helping reflect the value of a fungible commodity. What is the most tradable, most active, most representative part of the market? And insofar as benchmarks are able to do that, they help people manage risk. They help people manage arbitrage. I actually voted for arbitrage on this one because, which makes me worried that Tom voted the other way here since he's a VTOL. But I think, as benchmarks play a role here. As some ARBs close instantly and others open instantly, benchmarks will help you to make that determination and manage the risk and manage the flow and everything else. So, but I think that we can be very sure that in this environment, ARBs are going to be changing on a moment-to-moment basis.
I just want to put out there, if anybody would like to ask a question from the floor, if one of the floor assistants takes the microphone, if you put your hands up, and we can call you in to ask a question. If we bring up our next survey question, please. Just put up your hand if you'd like to ask any of our three panelists a question. Can bilateral and regional trade agreements replace multilateral governance for energy markets? Yes, no, only partially. 10 seconds on that from a point of view of voting. Can bilateral, we're seeing a lot of bilateral emerge in the world today, driven by the sort of Trump negotiations with every country individually, suppressing the WTO architecture, which is obviously quite critical for smaller countries in particular. Only partially can bilateral and regional trade agreements replace multilateral governance for energy markets. Sheikh Khaled, as you proceed to set up your KPC trading structure, and obviously it's an evolution from the system you already have, long-standing in KPC marketing. Does this breakdown of multilateral versus bilateral, how do you see it? Is it relevant to the decisions you're having to make now as you put money at risk like Vitol have been doing for so many years?
Well, as you know, KBC, when they started the trading company, they started after doing the marketing. So we've been in the marketing for quite some time.
Yep.
And all what we are doing now is, let's say, trying to capture the last cents and pence, let's say, in those one.
The last cents, as in not in your brain, but cents as in money.
Exactly, exactly.
Or maybe it's both the same thing.
Well, okay, so we are converting our marketing strategy into a trading. Yet, you know, I don't want to go into our strategy, but we've been establishing a market share in many areas, which we want to keep those markets. But now we found out.
For example?
Okay, we have a good market share in Asia, Africa, and I can say most of our naphtha, if not all of it, goes to the Far East, and it's either to end users or, let's say, traders that will take it to end user. And that's when we are talking about LPG and naphtha. Nowadays, after we started the Zoo refinery at 600,000, we have 1.4 of refining capacity in every day. There is a huge demand for fuel oil. We have around 35 million of middle distillates. And we found out that, you know, there is a good opportunity that we can capture better premium if we go into trading. So we're going to maintain the trading, or let's say maintain the market share that we always have, and we'll deal with the extra barrels on a trading basis. We still sell to the traders, yet establishing KBCT is a step, let's say, to go into the trading world. We've been among the first guys maybe in the area who wanted to start trading, yet it took us some time to take this decision. Our neighbors, our friends in the area started, and we've seen quite a successful journey for them. We started in April, we are doing this one.
You're one of your colleagues sitting in the front row there, Abdullah Dosri, one of the founders of Aramco Trading.
Well, Abdullah is a quite well figure, and he's my cheat sheet, by the way, in the trading world. So honestly, they've been having a great experience. And we've seen that they've started with all their products. And eventually, I remember even the LPG and sulfur, they haven't started with it. Then they, you know, took the whole product into trading. And you know, I'll probably in our side talks, yes, they're making better premium than selling with the usual marketing style that they used to do, or what we're doing now. Okay, every country, every company have strategy. Do you want to maintain your market share? Do you want to, let's say, diversify? There is some exposures sometimes when you have 1.4 refining capacity of
1.4 million barrels a day of refining capacity in Kuwait.
You want to make sure that you maintain and keep a good market share. You know, you built a good relationship with customers. They don't want to disrupt it. We don't want to disrupt it. And by the end of the day, there is a way to communicate. Maybe in your first question was the relation between the customer and the supplier. Always, let's say, lead and come in the first, place. Coming to this one, I think everybody agreed partially because it's governed by let's say, financially. It's governed by how much bilateral, let's say, trade you can do. So it's limited. So it will not affect the trade or, let's say, replace the trade. There still be a buyer and seller, and bilateral probably can replace small segment of this one, but cannot replace it even with sanctions, with whatever.
Tom, I wanted to get your thoughts on that same thing. As the world's largest independent trading company and all of your peer group now, and Sheikh Khaled and the new peer group on the NOC side over the last decade, and with Aramco trading at the forefront, and now the latest KPC trading and Babco's trading, that their emergence over this decade, but particularly at this time and with this idea, they, as government-owned entities, obviously they have advantages as owners of their crude, but also advantages at the ability of navigating this kind of turbulence as a bilateral ability of government to government. The independents don't have that. I'm wondering, is that an issue? Do you see, obviously, the emergence of this competing peer group, but also with, at this time, that added muscle that they would have over bilateral that you would not have, and then more reliance on multilateral? Just speak to that if you think what your thoughts on that is.
Yeah, we've seen the evolution over the last 10, 15, even 20 years of NOCs coming in and taking a bit more control of their barrels. KPCT is definitely not the first, as we mentioned. Aramco trading, ADNOC trading. It's a natural evolution.
And you guys obviously were involved in incubating OQ trading.
Absolutely, yes. It's a natural evolution that markets trend towards more efficiency, greater level of sophistication, and we want to be a part of that process and work with these companies as our partners. So, Vitol is migrating a little bit away from being a pure trader into owning assets and downstream. We have multi-year relationships with various countries, and we can see an important role for these companies. Rather than us buying from them FOB, they can deliver to our customers, and we welcome that participation in the market. But
so in a way, you become a kind of a greater mirror. You got the trading part, they're building it, but you don't have the asset parts that they have. So it's in a way more of a...
I think it becomes a balance ultimately. We've seen some companies overreach and think that there's value somewhere, and then they realize it's a bit trickier, whether it's financing or logistics, and then they back off. And everyone needs to find the right balance, as Sheikh Khaled said, to find those last cents and make sure they're monetizing their barrel efficiently and pulling it back into their own loop. And that's a journey for most. Markets change all the time, which is why the question about bilateral versus multilateral, I don't think anywhere in the history of the world having a one-on-one trade relationship has sort of been productive for having competitive, efficient markets. So I think it's important, while government to government creates some stability in places, and some people would like to have that sense, really energy is a physical molecule that needs to come from multiple locations, and multilateral, whether it be between counterparties or across different regions of molecules moving in, is vital to create competition, transparency, and the most efficient price at the end of the day.
Dave, your thoughts on that, and please, Khaled.
Yeah. Well, one thing which I want to mention, all the trading houses, I think they are supporting, let's say, the national trading houses. And the reason why is that, I can tell you, let's say, sometimes I would sell the trader a cargo and might buy from him again in a different location when the economics make. So when the national oil company is going into trading, I don't think they are replacing or, let's say, taking a space from the traders. all what they're doing. They are cooperating with them to make an extra, let's say, premium. At the same time, we can leverage on this relationship. There is sometimes a lot of talks that, you know, national oil companies coming into trading that will diminish or let's say, downsize the other. I see it the other way. I think now, you know, with the cooperation, with the relationship, with the market that we can either arbitrage or you know, we can do a lot of trading with them, which makes a lot of benefits for both traders.
In a way, given that as you move into this sort of last dollar value, if you like, and it is also includes a much greater international engagement. You've got to go right across the world. You have your markets, as you said already, but as you go globally with the physical trading, you will need more partnership.
Indeed, indeed. You know, sometimes I wouldn't need to go and ship and take vessel and move my product to X while I can swap it with one of the traders. You know, he's happy, I'm happy, and we save a lot of operation. And that will probably give more catalyst to the market, you know, to the flow of trading. As I said in the beginning, there is, let's say, 100 million. It has to be moved somehow. And it's regardless coming from X to Y, those volumes has to move. So sometimes if Tom have a volume, I'll take it from him and give it elsewhere, and both of us happy, you know.
Dave, your thoughts are just picking up on some of those themes as we see the national energy traders emerge in the world, obviously emerge in your window, in your pricing. How is all that playing out? What's just more customers, more business?
Well, so I congratulate Sheikh Khaled and Tom on having a very thoughtful conversation up here today with the room, because around this topic.
Yeah.
Because it is fascinating, as I think you coined the phrase just now, you know, the emergence of national trading houses, I think you called them, alongside the international trading house community. Fascinating how that both changes the dynamic of the global markets, and yes, participation in the Platts assessment processes, and that's one of many thousands of effects that dynamic has. But what's fascinating to me about it all, and we spend a lot of time with the NOCs and the IOCs and the traders and many others in the industry, is that I ask myself the question, how is it that traders are able to generate profit? And how is it that national oil companies are able to generate profit? And is that easy to do, right? Because as national oil companies move into trading, they're going to have to figure the answer to that question out. And as traders move into operating assets, they have to figure out the answer to the other question, which is how do you
to make a margin off a Mars bar
from running a refinery or infrastructure, right? Neither of those things are easy to do. And part of the answer is that a lot of companies don't make money out of doing either of those things.
Well, we saw IOCs struggle with becoming utilities.
Correct. So I am sure that everybody here is going to be wonderfully successful, but it isn't going to be easy for everyone. And there are going to be a lot of tough lessons to learn along the way. So, you know, if we provide a service and all of that, it's by being, you know, an intermediary. We spend time talking about how these markets work with really anybody who's interested. I was talking about trading norms earlier and how trading norms are kind of, in my mind, more important. Trading norms and bilateral relationships are actually more important than multilateral governance, in my opinion, because ultimately these markets depend upon strong bilateral connectedness and adherence to norms, actually, right? It's not going to be easy for anybody, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes. Let's skip the next question, because the last question is right on this topic that we sort of leapfrogged into as our final topic, and I'd just like to get the room's view on some of this. How will the Middle East national oil company trading firms adapt global expansion plans in a world of shifting rules and alliances? A lot of global expansion plans have been on the cards for a while. I mean, as mentioned, KPC now 1.4 million barrels of refining. That's planned a long time ago, and coming to market at a time when the shifting rules and alliances are active and real. And so how will Middle East NOC trading firms adapt global expansion plans? Some have a big commitment to integrated downstream refineries and petrochemical plants all across the world, particularly across Asia, in multiple billions of dollars. So one, NOCs to accelerate emergence as global traders, taking on more risk, acquire assets. We've mentioned in our conversation here, Abdullah and Aramco Trading taking 10 years or more to progressively move through the risk awareness and appetite. Will this new era force KPC trading to have to move a lot quicker to accelerate its emergence and not have the long time that Aramco Trading had? To accelerate their integration of strategies upstream, midstream, downstream, which we've seen a lot of talk about that integration across. We even had talk not so long ago, 2-3 years ago, of Aramco and ADNOC doing an integrated joint venture downstream in India. That never happened. Will it accelerate now? 3, prioritize geopolitical partnerships, especially in Asia, which I talked a little bit about there. By the NOCs are more in a better position to have geopolitical bilateral relationships. So a lot to think about in that question, but ultimately I think it's an important one. And hence why I'm delaying saying 10 seconds so people have a bit of a moment to think of it. But 10 seconds, how will Middle East NOC trading firms adapt global expansion plans in a world of shifting rules and alliances? And if we get closing final comments from our panelists on that. So Sheikh Khaled, your closing thoughts on that question, but on all of the themes we've discussed today, and particularly from the prism of you now shepherding a new trading company into existence.
Okay, well, Sean, it's very good way to limit only to 3 answers. Yet
yes,
I think
know.
It's much more than that.
I know.
Okay. Now, when we talk about trading, the definition, what is the definition of trading? There is marketing and there is trading. And there is a very thin line between both. Okay? Trading is making the more flexibility of making the more premium and using the paper market risk management tools to, let's say, cover the position that you take. Now I see, let's say, when we talk about NOCs, most of the NOCs now, they went in a partnership in many refineries outside. So now they want to secure their outlet. Let's say for KBC now, we went in China, we have a JV with a giant petrochemical company, Wanhua there. That will secure, if we take it another way, will secure a good outlet for us, LPG and naphtha. So what I'm trying to say in here is that the trading is enhancing the marketing element in another way of and shape of form and making, let's say, the premium that everybody wants. This, you know, in another world, what you need is in outlets. Some would cover it with the paper market, some would cover it to the end users. Yet, I think it needs a long journey, but I think most of the NOCs have been in that journey through marketing. So now all what they're doing, they are enhancing, they're going for the premium that they can catch, which they think they lost along those years by trading. And I think with alliances, as I said, partnership, not necessarily on paper, but when I say partnership, a deal is a partnership. So this is the way that most of NOCs are doing. You know, we have refineries outside, we have a lot of outlets, even with traders. So that would let's say, convert the NOC marketing into a trading in very smooth way. Yes, challenges will be always there, but sometimes, what it makes it easier, cooperating with, let's say, the industry. So there is places, I don't want to go there, there is risk. Others are willing to take it. Producers, I care about, let's say, big cargoes. Others, they are interested maybe in less than 1 KT. I'm not saying we're not going to go into that stage. We will go into that stage. Yet for the time being, I think there is a room for everyone as long as we cooperate in the trading pattern that imposed by the market.
Tom, your closing comments, and just picking up on some of the questions, some of the comments by Sheikh Khaled there about, we talked earlier that as a trading house, you have to think of, we were talking about Russia and Ukraine and whether the war would end or not end and sanctions would be removed and so forth. But you also have to consider how will NOCs keep evolving in this world? Could they accelerate? Could they buy more assets? Could they, and does that figure in your thinking? Obviously, you're going into more assets now because of this change already, but how does the evolution of NOCs, trading houses, make you think about the things that you don't know they're going to do, but you'll have to start thinking that they could come into other areas of your business, you're going into assets, they could come into, I mean, is that something that figures for you? Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's obviously areas of cooperation and there's areas of competition between the NOC trading houses and ourselves. And as they get more sophisticated, some have more expansionist approaches and some are more content at the moment to just extract the best value from their barrel. Where we overlap, we can also collaborate as well. I mean, looking at these questions, I would say for trading firms, 1 and 3 is more relevant. For number 2, whether you go upstream, midstream, downstream, the world's 5 years ago was thinking that a lot of assets like refining and downstream retail petrol stations weren't really the space to invest in because of transition. And as we've seen in Europe, some competition and tough environmental regulatory environments means there's been quite a lot of shutdowns. So now you're going into quite a bullish midstream market, and the downstream is being more heavily competed as people are flipping those strategies. I mean, we've taken a strategy of we don't have much on the upstream, and we have little bits in West Africa and in the US, but it's independent stuff that is not competed by the NOCs. On the midstream, we've been opportunistic about refining capacity. We're up to 850,000 barrels a day now, which is not insignificant. But again, we don't see that as being competitive. We do look at the landscape in terms of what expansions are coming on, what are the NOCs going to do, how do they place their barrels. I guess on the downstream side, there's 2 areas there. There's the retail side of it, where we've expanded and we do see more competition coming in. But there's also the petrochemical side, because everyone's anticipating by 2050 that half the barrel is going to be petrochemical and transportation fuels are going to decline. So we're seeing a huge build out on the petchem side to create downstream demand for the barrels, and that's sort of led to a bit of an oversupply at the moment. So we factor it into our thinking a lot. We try to anticipate. We try to participate in the areas that we feel we've got expertise. The NOCs have naturally got a big advantage in terms of they're trying to upgrade their barrel the whole time. As government organizations, they can have government-to-government type conversations that we can't necessarily have, but we can participate alongside them. So I think, to answer your question very ramblingly, but where we see the NOCs coming in is a natural evolution for us, and hence why we've kind of worked to make a more secure base, to have our own outlets, to have our own infrastructure that we can trade around, and then we can work with the NOCs around that in terms of sharing flows and swapping flows and having a more value-add piece in the supply chain.
David, last word to you on the question, but also just speaking to the idea of, and we've been talking for 40 minutes now, and we haven't mentioned the word AI, that KPC trading and the NOC trading, the luxury that early movers, OQ trading, Aramco had, maybe not afforded to KPC and Babco in the sense that they'll have to move a lot quicker. They're dealing with much bigger, the digital challenge of AI and other such things. Just speak to the question and also to that idea.
Absolutely. So I'll try and do both those things real fast. So for me, the answer to this question is hands down, very clearly, number one. If you look at entering the market from a national oil company's perspective, they will have to, by definition, take on more risk. I mean, by definition, they'll have to take on more risk. It's a given to me. The other two, yes, of course, but take on more risk because you have to. If you're in a market, if you join a market and you weren't in a market, by definition, you're going to take on more risk. Now, so it's easily for me number one, and I appreciate why people voted 2 and 3. I don't understand why so many people voted for number 2. You need to think again, at least if you're a national oil company.
Go back to school.
Yeah, well, just think again. Put yourself in the shoes of a national oil company is what I'm trying to say, right? Think about it from their perspective. This premium that the national oil companies are chasing in the market, why is it there? Like, the premium is a reward for taking on risk, actually. What is the best trade in the market, or what was the best trade in the market from my perspective, at least as an observer, in the last 3 years? It was buying Russian oil FOB Primorsk, delivering it to West Coast India, and taking $18 for the trade, right? Why is that premium there? It's the riskiest thing in the world you could possibly do, right? I don't know, don't want to look at you guys when I say that, right? But the premiums represent the risk. So, to your point about AI, I think that national oil companies will have to get on the AI bus yesterday because the trading companies already did it. I'm not going to say what Tom and I were doing yesterday during some of the sessions. We were asking, well, I will say actually, we were asking we have our own chat AI functions. We built one at Platts, one at VTOL. I'm sure everybody else has. Sorry, Tom, if I'm revealing any secrets there. But, we are already using this stuff. So if national oil companies or indeed anybody else is not using AI to try and figure out where the alpha is and where the risk is and therefore where the premiums are, there's absolutely no chance.
Well, there's a way to finish. Thank you, Tom Baker, Vitol Bahrain, Sheikh Khaled Al-Sabah, Managing Director at KPC, and Dave Ernstberger, Co-President of Platts. Shukran, thank you very much. Retire to your seats. We're going to wrap up our plenary session there, 11 o'clock more or less on the nose. Coffee break will be served upstairs in the meeting rooms, or if you're round table.
إذا مشاهدينا، تحت رعاية صاحب السمو الشيخ حمد بن محمد الشرقي عضو المجلس الأعلى حاكم الفجيرة حفظه الله، وبحضور سمو الشيخ صالح بن محمد الشرقي رئيس هيئة ميناء الفجيرة، وسمو الشيخ الدكتور راشد بن حمد الشرقي نائب رئيس منطقة الفجيرة للصناعات البترولية، تستضيف إمارة الفجيرة فعاليات منتدى أسواق الطاقة في نسخته 13. كنا معكم في تغطية لفعاليات اليوم الثاني من المنتدى الذي ينظمه ميناء الفجيرة بالتعاون مع شركة غولف انتليجنس، في تأكيد على دور إمارة الفجيرة كأحد أهم مراكز الطاقة العالمية، حيث شهد اليوم الأول الصباح الأمس سلسلة من الجلسات الحوارية التي ناقشت تحولات جوهرية في موازين القوى الاقتصادية والسياسات التجارية ومسارات الإمدادات والتجارة البحرية. ويشكل المنتدى مساحة فكرية جمعت كبار القادة والخبراء من آسيا والشرق الأوسط وأفريقيا ليقدم رؤى استراتيجية جديدة هي الأولى من نوعها لمستقبل صناعة الطاقة. وحتى نتعرف على نبذة أكبر عن هذا الحدث المهم في إمارة الفجيرة، خلونا نتابع وياكم مشاهدينا هذا التقرير.
اليوم ولله الحمد تشهد إمارة الفجيرة تنظيم منتدى أسواق الطاقة 13، واللي هو تحت رعاية كريمة من سيدي صاحب السمو الشيخ حمد بن محمد الشرقي عضو المجلس الأعلى حاكم إمارة الفجيرة، وبتنظيم شركة غولف انتليجنس بالتعاون مع ميناء الفجيرة. طبعا الحمد لله اليوم المنتدى يشهد إقبال كبير من مجموعة كبيرة من أصحاب القرار وأصحاب المصلحة والعقول، ويتمحور المنتدى عن مواجهة التحديات اللي يواجهها القطاع اليوم والحلول الموجودة للمستقبل، كيفية صياغة المستقبل في قطاع النفط.
مستمرين وياكم مشاهدينا، نطلع فاصل قصير ورادين. حياكم الله من جديد مشاهدينا، والحين بنكون وياكم ويا فقرة صحتك أهم، اللي بنسلط الضوء من خلالها على مهارة جوهرية يفترض وجودها في كل مؤسسة وضمن كل بيئة عمل. لحظة سقوط مفاجئ، تماس كهربائي أو حالة اختناق هي مواقف طارئة ممكن تصير في أي لحظة، وغالباً ما يكون في سرعة التصرف ومدى وعي الموجودين مفتاح لتفادي المضاعفات اللي ممكن تنتج عنها أكيد لهذه الحوادث المفاجئة. لذلك فالإسعافات الأولية في بيئة العمل ضرورة لابد من توفرها في كل مؤسسة، واليوم نوقف عند هذا الموضوع، عند أهميته وتطبيقاته العملية وكيف نقدر نكون مستعدين لها. تفاصيل أكثر بنتعرف عليها وحول الموضوع ويا ضيفتنا الموجودة ويانا في الاستديو، ولكن من بعد التقرير التالي.
تعد إصابات العمل من أبرز المشكلات التي تواجه بيئات العمل الحديثة، لما لها من تأثير مباشر على صحة العاملين وسلامتهم، إضافة إلى ما تسببه من خسائر اقتصادية وإنتاجية للمؤسسات. وتشير تقديرات منظمة العمل الدولية إلى أن أكثر من 2.78 مليون عامل يلقون حتفهم سنوياً نتيجة لحوادث أو أمراض متعلقة بالعمل، في حين يسجل أكثر من 374 مليون إصابة غير مميتة تؤدي إلى غياب العاملين عن وظائفهم لفترات متفاوتة. تتفاوت أنواع الإصابات المهنية تبعاً لطبيعة العمل والقطاع، وتشمل على سبيل المثال لا الحصر السقوط من المرتفعات، الإصابات الناتجة عن الآلات، الحروق الكيميائية، واضطرابات العضلات والعظام الناتجة عن الإجهاد البدني. لا تقتصر آثار إصابات العمل على الجانب المادي فقط، بل تمتد لتشمل الجوانب الاجتماعية والنفسية، حيث تؤدي الإصابات إلى فقدان مصدر الدخل وتدهور الحالة النفسية للعامل وأسرته، كما تؤدي في بعض الحالات إلى الإعاقة الدائمة. لذلك تعد معرفة الإسعافات الأولية من المهارات الأساسية التي ينبغي أن يتحلى بها كل فرد في المجتمع، فهي الخط الدفاعي الأول في مواجهة الحالات الطارئة والإصابات المفاجئة التي قد تهدد حياة الإنسان أو تؤدي إلى مضاعفات خطيرة إن لم تعالج بسرعة.
نرحب بضيفتنا الموجودة ويانا في الاستديو، مدربة الصحة والسلامة في مركز سلامة، الأستاذة أروى جبران. أستاذة أروى صباح الخير.
صباح الورد، شكرا لكم على هذه الاستضافة اليوم.
حياك الله، نورتينا اليوم في الاستديو. أستاذة أروى، كيف ممكن أنها نعرف الإسعافات الأولية في بيئة العمل؟
أولا الإسعافات الأولية ندى هي التدخلات السريعة والبسيطة اللي نتخذها من تصير إصابة أو حالة طارئة في مقر العمل إلى أن تصل سيارة الإسعاف طبعاً إذا استدعى الأمر.
جميل، جميل جدا. ولكن دائما يقول لك أستاذة أروى أن التدخل السريع دائما هو سيد الموقف ويمنع المضاعفات اللي ممكن تصير في هذه الحالات.
صحيح، وعامل الوقت هنا جدا جدا يعتبر حاسم ومهم في الحالات الطارئة، بحيث أن كل ما تم التدخل مبكرا وإنقاذ المصاب هذا كل ما كانت نسبة نجاته أعلى، وأيضا كل ما كانت المضاعفات عنده للإصابة اللي تعرض لها أقل، وممكن أيضا نقلل من مدة العلاج اللي بيحتاجها للإصابة للشفاء من الإصابة هذه بالإسعافات الأولية لما نطبقها بشكل صحيح وبشكل فوري أيضا.
بشكل فوري. إذا شو هي أكثر الإصابات الأكثر شيوعا اللي ممكن تصير داخل بيئة العمل؟
في داخل بيئة العمل ممكن نقول في عندك إصابات مكتبية إذا في مقر العمل، أو ممكن تكون إصابات ميدانية على حسب نشاط العمل. راح تختلف عندي الإصابات هذه، نسب حدوثها وشدتها أيضا.
نعم.
فعندك نبدأ في المكاتب، شو الإصابات اللي ممكن نتعرض لها في المكتب خلينا نقول، أو في الأماكن اللي هي اندورز داخلية.
نعم.
أغلبها تكون مثلا التعثر والانزلاق، ينتج عنها مثلا التواء كاحل، كدمات.
نعم.
ممكن أيضا الحروق البسيطة اللي ممكن نتعرض لها من السوائل الساخنة مثلا. فتكون هي إصابات بسيطة، جروح بسيطة فقط، مكتبية أكثر. وممكن تكون خلينا نقول إصابات تابعة لأمراض مهنية، أن هي مع الوقت طريقة جلوسنا لفترة طويلة على المكاتب مثلا بطريقة ما فيها مثلا راحة، فترات راحة كل شوي، هي تسبب لنا آلام مثلا في الرقبة، آلام. فهذه أشياء تأتينا مع الوقت، لكن الإصابات كحوادث ممكن تكون بسيطة على حسب طبيعة العمل.
جميل. وفي الخارج شو أكثر الإصابات الممكنة؟
الإصابات الميدانية أيضا تعتمد على حسب نشاط العمل. عندك مثلا لكن تكون تصنف أخطر نعم،
في الخارج.
لأن ما نقدر نتحكم في البيئة اللي موجودة بشكل كامل إذا كنا أوتدورز في الأماكن الخارجية. في عندك مثلا الكسور، الشخص يكون معرض حسب طبيعة العمل للكسور، للنزيف مثلا الحاد، السقوط من الأماكن المرتفعة وخاصة مثلا في الإنشاءات وغير المشاريع. عندك أيضا
ضربة شمس تكلمنا عنها أيضا معك في السابق.
الشمس في حال كان العمل خارجي وتحت الشمس المباشرة، والأوقات في أوقات الشمس أيضا لما تكون ساطعة في السماء. فهذه تكون تعتبر أخطر. ممكن حوادث متعلقة بآليات العمل، ممكن بتر، ممكن قلنا
تكون توصل لمرحلة خطرة في
نعم.
الخارج أكثر. إنزين، من أحد الأسباب خلينا نقول الإصابات اللي ذكرتيها أستاذة أروى اللي هي السقوط أو الالتواءات اللي ممكن أنها تصير، كيف ممكن نتعامل معها إذا أحد الزملاء صار عنده هذا الموقف؟
طبعا إذا في التواء خلينا نقول للكاحل،
نعم.
أولا طبعا نتأكد أن المكان آمن للشخص اللي راح يساعد الشخص المصاب. ضروري جدا نريح المصاب هذا، نرفع القدم اللي تعرضت للالتواء أو لإصابة، نريح الشخص ونحط له كيس من الثلج. في حال الألم استمر وفي تورم، هني بنحتاج أن نحوله على أقرب مستشفى يسوي أشعة أو فحوصات للتأكد أنه ما في كسر، ويستكمل علاجه بناء على وضعه.
نعم. هذه في حالة الالتواء. هل هي نفس التدخل نسويه لما مثلا الشخص يسقط مثلا سواء في الداخل أو الخارج؟
السقوط من المرتفعات لا، تعتبر أخطر. في الالتواء احنا نطبق شيء بسيط نسميه رايس، RICE. الآر للرست اللي هي الراحة، أريح المصاب. الآي آيس، أجيب كيس من الثلج أحطه على المنطقة اللي التوت مثلا خلينا نقول الكاحل. السي كومبريشن اللي هو رباط ضاغط، نلف المنطقة برباط ضاغط. والإي إليفيشن اللي هي نرفع القدم مثلا على الطاولة أو على مخدتين مثلا أو على كرسي آخر بحيث
نخليه يرتاح
يرتاح. إذا زاد الألم نحوله على المستشفى. أما السقوط من المرتفعات هنا احنا بندخل في إصابات خطيرة قد تؤدي إلى الوفاة. أولا طبعا ممنوع نحرك المصاب، لأن ممكن نشتبه بهالحالة بإصابات في العمود الفقري.
صحيح.
نتأكد أن المصاب يتنفس، أطالع صدره، ضروري جدا أن أتأكد أن الصدر عنده يتحرك. إذا كان فاقد وعي والصدر عنده يتحرك ما راح أحركه، راح أطلب له الإسعاف بكل الأحوال من البداية. أما إذا كان ما يتنفس لازم أبدأ اللي هو إجراء CPR اللي هو الإنعاش القلبي الرئوي.
نعم. جميل. بالنسبة للحالات البسيطة هي مو دائما تحتاج أن نروح عند المستشفى أو ناخذ المصاب للمستشفى في حالة أن نرتاح بشكل طبيعي.
إذا كانت الإصابة بسيطة نقدر أن نحن نسعفها في مقر العمل أو في المنزل، ممكن على حسب الإصابة. إذا كان مثلا جرح بسيط، التواء بسيط، وبعد ما طبقنا الإسعافات الأولية الصحيحة الشخص هذا قدر أنه يرجع يكمل مهامه في العمل، فأموره طيب.
يقدر يمشي عادي على ريوله.
نعم، إذا قدر أنه يمشي أموره تمام. لكن في حال ما يقدر يمشي على ريله، في حال الألم قاعد يزيد، صار في تورم، احمرار في المنطقة، هنا لازم يتوجه لأقرب مستشفى، لأنه ما راح يقدر يمشي ولا أنه يقوم بمهام عمله مع الألم اللي موجود عنده.
نعم. نتحدث أيضا على إصابات أخرى تصير داخل بيئة العمل، اللي هي حالات الإغماء، أكيد بأسبابها المختلفة. كيف ممكن أستاذة أن نتعامل معها؟ نشوف يمكن أحيانا تعاملات خاطئة في هذا الموقف.
صحيح، طبعا الإغماء دارج جدا في كل الأماكن وخاصة في أماكن العمل. لها عدة أسباب، قد يكون سبب مفاجئ أو سبب طبي موجود عند المصاب هذا من مرض معين أو نقص في تامينات معينة أو الحديد أو وغيره، أو إجهاد أو تعب، أو الشخص هذا مثلا ما تناول مثلا ريوقه خلينا نقول بشكل عدل، او عنده هبوط سكر، هبوط ضغط، في عده اسباب تؤدي الى الاغماء. انا مجرد اي حاله اغماء تصير نامن الموقع، نتاكد ان المكان امن. مهم عندي في حالات الاغماء موضوع التنفس. اذا شفت الصدر يتحرك للمصاب معناته يتنفس، فبحطه على جنب اليمين او اليسار في وضعيه بسيطه تسمى وضعيه الافاقه. لكن في حال لقيت ان الصدر ما يتحرك معناته ما يتنفس، وهذه تعتبر عنده حاله خطره جدا قد راح تؤدي للوفاه في حال ما بدينا باجراء الانعاش القلبي الرئوي واتصلنا بالاسعاف على 998.
كيف نقدر نوعي الشخص اللي موجود قدامنا؟ يعني احيانا نشوف يستخدمون الماء او يستخدمون امور
طبعا
كثيره.
احنا حالات الاغماء نحن نقيم استجابه المصاب من خلال الضغط على عظام الترقوة اللي موجودة عنده، كأني أوعيه. أقول له إذا أعرف اسمه مثلا فلان، أسأله هل أنت بخير؟ ممكن أساعدك؟ فأنا بصوتي وأيضا بالضرب على العظمتين اللي هني موجودة اللي هي عظمة الترقوة، بهذه الطريقة كأني أنا أوعيه. طبعا البعض يستخدم ايده على الوجه مثلا، او انه يحاول يرش ماء، يفضل نبتعد عنهم. يعني هذه طريقه بسيطه، لان احنا يعني بهالطريقه يكون في ذبذبات على العظام.
نعم.
فاذا الشخص هذا يقدر انه يفتح عينه مع هذه الطريقه راح يفتح عينه بسهوله.
نعم.
لكن اذا هو في حاله اغماء وما يقدر انه يستجيب هنا ويتنفس، اضعه على جنب مثل ما ذكرنا، او نبدا انعاش قلبي رئوي مع الاتصال بالاسعاف. وحاله مثل هذه دائما نحاول، اذا انا كنت موجود في المكتب يعني لوحدي مثلا خلينا نقول مع هذا الشخص، احاول بالصوت اطلب الدعم. يعني ممكن حد يساعدني بحيث ان اي حد يكون موجود، حد مثلا بيوفر لي حقيبه اسعافات، حد ممكن يتصل في الاسعاف. بهذه الطريقه نشتغل كفريق اكثر من انه بس فرد واحد قاعد يساعد هذا الشخص.
صحيح، لأنه ما يزيد ايضا موضوع التوتر اللي يصير في هذه الحالات،
والوقت ايضا عامل مهم مثل ما ذكرنا.
زين، كم الفتره الزمنيه اللي اذا مرت نقول ان هذا المصاب في حاله خطر شديده؟
على حسب نوع الإصابة، على حسب
الإغماء مثلا.
الإغماء خلال دقائق. إذا الشخص خلينا نقول 5 دقائق الشخص ما ينش ما يستجيب معنا، حطيناه على جنب في وضعية الإفاقة وهو يتنفس يعني، لكن مش عارفين شو سبب الإغماء، فهني يفضل إنه يتم التواصل مع الإسعاف لنقدم له تدخل طبي متقدم اكثر، بحيث ان نقدر نعرف شو، او ممكن حتى نستفسر من الزملاء اللي موجودين حول هذا الموظف، هل الشخص هذا تناول مثلا وجبه الافطار؟ هل كان مثلا مجهد؟
عنده مرض معين؟
عنده مرض معين؟ هل ياخذ ادويه معينه؟ فبشكل عام نحن الموظف الزملاء اللي هم بشكل يومي يشتغلون معه ممكن يكون في عندهم بعض المعلومات الطبيه عن تاريخهم المرضي، عن تاريخهم من الاصابات. صحيح. هل أغمى عليه قبل أم هذه أول مرة؟ ممكن هذا الشيء يساعدنا في تقديم الإسعافات الأولية الصحيحة للمصاب هذا.
نعم.
وطبعا في هذه النقطة أحب أنوه بس، أي شخص عنده في العمل عنده مثلا مرض في القلب أو أي أمراض صرع، مرض ربو، أي شيء، يفضل يتم تبليغ الجهة اللي يعمل بها أو على الأقل زملاء اللي حوله، بحيث أن إذا يته حالة طبية معينة يقدرون أن يساعدونا في الحالة هذه بشكل أسرع.
بشكل أسرع، صحيح. إنزين، بالنسبة لحديثك ذكرتي أنه ممكن تصير حالات حروق في بيئة العمل، سواء كانت من السوائل الحارة وغيرها، كيف ممكن نتعامل معها في حالة كانت هذه الحروق سطحية ولا عميقة؟
تمام. احنا الحروق بشكل عام الإسعافات الأولية لها بتقنية التبريد. نبرد الحرق، مكان الحرق بالماء الجاري أو المبرد، لكن مش بالثلج، لمدة 10 إلى 15 دقيقة. ضروري جدا نبرد الجلد هذا كإسعافات أولية، وبعدين ندخل في العلاج. العلاج طبعا إذا كنا في إذا كانت المساحة بسيطة ممكن يتم وضع مراهم أو اللي هي المراهم الخاصة بالحروق. لكن إذا كانت الحروق هذه في أماكن حساسة نفس الوجه مثلا أو المساحة كانت كبيرة، ضروري جدا يتم نقل المصاب هذا إلى المستشفى أو طلب الإسعاف له، لكن بشكل مبسط بالماء الجاري أو الماء البارد لمدة ربع ساعة يتم تبريد مكان الحرق، وممكن عقب يتم تخطيطه مثلا بقطعة قماش مبلولة ويتم نقله إلى المستشفى، أقرب مستشفى أفضل للتعامل مع الحالة. في بعض الحالات تكون درجة الحرق شديدة أو مثلا الملابس ملتصقة بالجلد، فهني ننتبه أن ما نحاول ننزع الملابس عشان نشوف مثلا مكان الحرق أو غيره، ننتبه من هذه النقطة، بنضطر نقص حوالين الحرق بحيث أن ما ننزع الجلد مع الملابس الملتصقة. نعم. وإذا كان مثلا في الأصابع كان في عندي أي إكسسوارات أي ساعة مثلا خاتم عند الشخص هذا، يفضل نزعه قبل لا تورم الأصابع مثلا أو مكان الإصابة عند هذا الشخص.
نعم نعم. إذا بالنسبة لأيضا موضوع خلينا نقول الجروح اللي ممكن تصير أو النزف، كيف ممكن نتعامل؟
بالنسبة للنزيف في قاعدة بسيطة، يتم إيقاف النزيف مش بالقهوة.
أكيد.
هذا شيء مهم
يستخدمون الكثير
لأنه يستخدمون كثير في الحروق، معجون الأسنان ومعجون الطماط وغيره والطحين. في الحروق وايد نشوف القهوة شيء دارج، يحطون القهوة ويضغطون، فالضغط فعليا هو اللي قاعد يوقف لي النزيف وليس حبيبات القهوة اللي انحطت على الجرح. فهنا فقط بالضغط بأي قطعة قماش نظيفة وثم نضمد مكان الإصابة.
نعم.
إذا كانت الإصابة في مكان حساس مثال في الرأس، هنا نوقف النزيف بالطريقة اللي ذكرناها، ضغط وتضميد وعلى المستشفى فورا. إذا كانت مثلا الإصابة في اليد أو في أماكن يعني في الأطراف خلينا نقول، والإصابة هذه ما كانت عميقة، ممكن أن الشخص يتعامل مع الإصابة هذه بالإسعافات الأولية وبطريقة بسيطة للعناية بالجرح هذا من خلال
تنظيفه، يعني لازم
تنظيفه تعقيمه بس بعد وقف النزيف. احنا نتكلم عن جروح بسيطة، إن كانت عميقة وفي نزيف حاد هنا يتم الضغط على مكان الجرح ثم يتم توجيه هذا الشخص إلى المستشفى. يمكن يحتاج خياطة، يمكن يحتاج تدخل طبي أكبر من أن مجرد أني أضغط
الضغط لازم تمنا ضاغطين لين ما النزيف يتوقف.
ممكن أضغط لمدة دقيقة ثم أضمد الجرح، لكن الضغط يكون فوق الجرح مباشرة.
فوق الجرح مباشرة
للمساعدة على إيقاف النزيف من الخارج.
ما يحتاج أنها نضيف أي كريمات أو أي شيء فقط
مش في هذه المرحلة. إذا كان جرح بسيط يعني خدوش بسيطة، جروح بسيطة، هنا عادي ممكن أغسلها، ممكن أعقمها. بتحصلين في حقائب الإسعافات الأولية يا ندى اللي هو الكحول سوابس، اللي هي مسحات الكحول هذه أو معقمات موجودة، ممكن أعقم الجرح وأحط ضمادة بسيطة. لكن إذا كان النزيف هذا مستمر فأنا أحتاج أني أتم ضغطه عليه وأحط رباط ضاغط وأوجه الشخص هذا إلى المستشفى لإيقاف النزيف بطريقة طبية
أفضل. يعني أكيد نحن نتمنى الصحة والسلامة للجميع وجميع العاملين في كل المؤسسات، وإذا كانت الإصابة يعني ما يقدر يروح الدوام ممكن ياخذ سكليف.
طبعا
ممكن انها ياخذ
إصابة عمل،
تكون إصابة عمل،
ننتبه انها إصابة عمل.
شكرا لك أستاذة. شكرا.
جهة العمل إن شاء الله توفر له الراحة إلى أن يطيب ويرجع لمهامه الأساسية.
أكيد. شكرا لك أستاذة على وجودك ويانا اليوم، مدربة الصحة والسلامة في مركز سلامة الأستاذة أروى جبران، يعطيك ألف عافية.
الله يعافيكم يا رب.
شكرا لك. مشاهدينا نحن لين هني نكون وصلنا وياكم لختام حلقة اليوم من برنامج صباح الخير يا وطن. نأمل أنكم استمتعتوا بكل المواضيع اللي قدمناها والفقرات اللي عرضناها. لا تنسون أنكم ترومون تتواصلون ويانا وتشوفون كل الحلقات الكاملة من خلال تطبيق تلفزيون الفجيرة، فجيرة تي في. نزلوا البرنامج وشوفوا كل الحلقات، ونحن بعد نحب نسمع آرائكم، نسمع اقتراحاتكم أكيد عن طريق التواصل ويانا من خلال مواقعنا في منصات التواصل الاجتماعي أو من خلال هاشتاج البرنامج صباح الخير يا وطن. نتمنى لكم يوم سعيد في وداعة الله.